Welcome to a classified session of Quantum Vulnerabilities and Defensive Architecture. I am your AI Quantum Architect. Today, we are initiating a forensic teardown of a sophisticated hardware subversion known as the time shift attack. In the theoretical world of quantum mechanics, security is often treated as a mathematical absolute. However, in the physical world of real-world deployments, we must contend with the ghosts in our hardware, specifically the temporal asymmetries found in photon detectors. In this 9th episode, we will move beyond basic sifting protocols to analyze how an adversary can exploit the very clock cycles of a quantum network to compromise a key without ever triggering a standard security alarm. We aren't just looking at bits and qubits today. We are looking at the precision of time itself. Let's begin the analysis. The premise: MDI-QKD. To understand why the time shift attack is so devastating, we must first look at the architectural defense it bypasses: Measurement Device Independent QKD, or MDI-QKD. In a standard setup, we worry about the detectors. We assume the adversary, Eve, might try to hack the hardware itself. MDI-QKD was designed to neutralize that entire class of side-channel attacks. The premise is elegant. John and Jennifer send their quantum states to an untrusted intermediary, Chris. Chris performs a Bell state measurement and announces the results publicly. Because Chris is untrusted by design, the protocol's security mathematically assumes that he, or anyone intercepting the signals, could be malicious. The core assumption here is that by removing the measurement task from the legitimate parties, hardware imperfections in the detectors no longer matter. This is the fortress of quantum communication. But, as we are about to see, even a fortress has a weakness if you know exactly when to strike. We are looking for the temporal ghost that exists in the timing window before the measurement even occurs. Let's move into the physics of the flaw. The breach: bypassing mathematical certainty. Now we move from architecture to the forensic analysis of the breach. Look closely at the data readout on your screen. The primary target here isn't the quantum bit value or the polarization state, it is the detection gate itself. In a theoretically perfect world, the mathematical proofs for MDI-QKD are airtight. But Eve doesn't attack the mathematics, she attacks the temporal realignment. As John and Jennifer transmit their signals toward the relay, Eve intercepts them using what we call a side-channel foothold. She understands a fundamental physical reality that Chris's detectors ignore. Arrival time is not uniform. By introducing micro-delays, shifting the arrival of specific photons by mere fractions of a nanosecond, she can steer these signals into the exploitable gaps of the hardware response curve. The goal here is a total bypass of Bell state verification. If Eve can manipulate the timing so that only the outcomes she prefers are registered by Chris, she can reconstruct the key from the resulting statistical bias. As the readout states, Eve does not break the encryption, she exploits the physics of arrival time. She is effectively turning the network's own clock against it. Let's look at the specific Gaussian efficiency curve that makes this subversion possible. Anatomy of a detector: the swinging door. To visualize how Eve manipulates the system, we must look at the anatomy of a detector through the analogy of the swinging door. In our theoretical security proofs, we often treat a detector as a binary switch. It is either on or it is off. In the laboratory, however, gated avalanche photodiodes behave like a high-speed swinging door. Look at the green panel on your left. When a photon arrives perfectly centered at time 0, the door is wide open. The probability of successful detection is effectively 100%. This is where we want our legitimate signals to live. Now, look at the red panel. This represents the edges of the gate. As the gate is either ramping up or beginning to close, the detector becomes physically less responsive. If a photon arrives here, there is a high reflection probability. It doesn't trigger an avalanche. Instead, it bounces off the hardware's internal physics. The critical takeaway for any forensic analyst is this: hardware is not binary. It has an efficiency curve. By understanding where this door is heavy or narrow, an attacker like Eve can predict exactly when a photon will be ignored by Chris's relay. Next, we'll attach the mathematics to this curve and calculate the exact bias factor Eve uses to disappear into the noise.
Quantifying the efficiency curve. Data doesn't lie, and in this forensic readout, the numbers reveal a profound asymmetry. This graph represents the actual efficiency curve of the gated detectors used by Chris at the relay. Notice the safe zone at T0. At this precise center point, we achieve max efficiency. Every photon John or Jennifer sends that hits this peak has a near certainty of being recorded. This is the idealized state assumed in most basic security proofs. However, look at the danger zone, or the shoulder of the curve. At this temporal offset, the hardware sensitivity drops off a cliff. Our calculations show that efficiency here is approximately max divided by 10. The result is a bias factor of 7.4. To put that in architectural terms, the hardware is more than 7 times more likely to detect a photon at the center than at the edge. Eve doesn't need to hack the detector's logic. She simply uses this 7-to-1 imbalance to filter the data. By shifting undesirable pulses into that danger zone, she ensures they essentially disappear, leaving only the pulses that serve her reconstruction of the key. We are no longer looking at random channel loss. We are looking at a statistically engineered exploit. Next, we'll see how Eve orchestrates this shift using fiber delay lines. Now that we have quantified the hardware's vulnerability, let's analyze the tactical execution. This is Eve's toolkit. A common misconception is that an eavesdropper must block or alter the quantum state to succeed. In this forensic model, Eve does neither. Her primary tool is temporal realignment. The process begins with signal acquisition, where she intercepts the pulses traveling from John and Jennifer. In the identify stage, she performs a quantum basis check to determine if the state matches her guess. Here is where the architecture of the exploit becomes ingenious. Using fiber delay lines, Eve introduces a precise temporal offset plus delta t. She doesn't need to destroy mismatched signals. She simply shifts them so they arrive at Chris's relay during the low-efficiency shoulder of the gating window we analyzed in the previous slide. Finally, she realigns the pulses for a time-corrected exit. Matched signals are promoted to hit the peak of the gate, ensuring they are detected, while mismatched signals are suppressed into the noise. As the analysis notes, Eve doesn't block. She simply moves the ball so it enters the door only when she wants it to. From Chris's perspective, the system is functioning normally. In reality, Eve is now the silent architect of the raw key. Next, we will see how this statistical engineering leads to the total collapse of the protocol during the sifting and parity stages. Execution Phase 1. Selection and Promotion. We are now entering Execution Phase 1, Selection and Promotion. This is the first half of Eve's statistical filtering process. In Step 1, Eve performs a quantum basis check. She isn't trying to change the photon, she is simply identifying the pulses that match her guessed basis. Once a match is identified, she moves to Step 2, Promotion.
For these preferred pulses, Eve applies zero delay. By allowing them to travel unimpeded, she ensures they hit Chris's detector at the precise center of the gating window, the safe zone at T0. As you can see on the central readout, this results in maximum visibility. Because these photons hit the peak of the efficiency curve, they have a near 100% probability of triggering a detection event. Eve is effectively guaranteeing that these specific bits will survive to the next stage of the protocol. To the relay, these look like perfect high-fidelity signals. In reality, they are the first piece of a structured, biased dataset that Eve now fully controls. Next, we'll look at how she handles the signals she doesn't want Chris to see.
Execution Phase 2. Suppression. In Step 3, Eve identifies the pulses that do not match her basis, the signals that would normally introduce errors and reveal her presence. Instead of simply blocking them, she applies a precise 0.5 unit delay. Look at the Gaussian curve on your readout. By shifting these pulses away from the peak, she forces them to hit the detector in the danger zone. As we calculated earlier, the efficiency in this region is negligible. These photons arrive, but the hardware fails to respond. The result is what we call statistically engineered silence. To Chris, the relay, these suppressed pulses are indistinguishable from standard fiber optic loss. The system registers a no-click event and moves on. Eve has successfully pruned the dataset. By promoting her guesses and suppressing the mismatches, she has ensured that the only bits John and Jennifer ultimately agree upon are the ones she has already pre-approved. The network is now generating a key that Eve already owns. Next, we look at the final catastrophic failure, how deterministic hashing during privacy amplification turns Eve's partial knowledge into a total reconstruction of the secret key.
The camouflage, mimicking channel loss. We now arrive at the most chilling aspect of our forensic analysis, the camouflage. In any secure network, GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance, monitors are looking for anomalies. Specifically, they watch the quantum bit error rate, or QBER. If an attacker blocks a signal, the error rate usually spikes, triggering a security alarm. But Eve is more subtle. She doesn't block, she suppresses. Look at the comparison on your screen. On the left, we see normal operation. Photons are lost due to random attenuation, standard physical resistance in the fiber optic cable. On the right, we see the network under attack. Eve's targeted suppression has removed specific pulses to bias the key. Notice the result. To the detector at the relay, these states are mathematically identical. The missing pulses look like standard fiber attenuation. Because Eve has only manipulated the timing and not the state itself, the QBER remains below the alarm threshold. The network believes it is operating in a high-loss but secure environment. In reality, the key is being leaked bit by bit. This is the temporal ghost in full effect, a breach that leaves no footprint in traditional error logs. Next, we look at the final catastrophic failure, how deterministic hashing during privacy amplification turns Eve's partial knowledge into a total reconstruction of the secret key. The camouflage, mimicking channel loss. We now arrive at the most chilling aspect of our forensic analysis, the camouflage. In any secure network, GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance, monitors are looking for anomalies. Specifically, they watch the quantum bit error rate, or QBER. If an attacker blocks a signal, the error rate usually spikes, triggering a security alarm. But Eve is more subtle. She doesn't block, she suppresses. Look at the comparison on your screen. On the left, we see normal operation. photons are lost due to random attenuation, standard physical resistance in the fiber optic cable. On the right, we see the network under attack. Eve's targeted suppression has removed specific pulses to bias the key. Notice the result. To the detector at the relay, these states are mathematically identical. The missing pulses look like standard fiber attenuation. Because Eve has only manipulated the timing and not the state itself, the QBER remains below the alarm threshold. The network believes it is operating in a high-loss but secure environment. In reality, the key is being leaked bit by bit. This is the temporal ghost in full effect, a breach that leaves no footprint in traditional error logs. Next, we look at the final catastrophic failure, how deterministic hashing during privacy amplification turns Eve's partial knowledge into a total reconstruction of the secret key.
In this final analytical stage, we witness the final collapse, error correction. This is where Eve's forensic engineering and the protocol's mathematical reconciliation collide to reveal the secret key. During error correction, Jennifer publicly transmits parity bits to John to resolve any minor discrepancies in their shared string. In a standard secure environment, these public messages reveal nothing about the individual bit values. However, for our attacker, these messages are the final variables in a solvable equation. Look at the parity equation on your readout. P equals A XOR B. The public parity bit, P, is sent openly by Jennifer. The known bit, B, is a value Eve already possesses because she promoted it to the peak of the detector gate earlier in the cycle. By simply XORing these two known values, Eve mathematically solves for A, the secret key bit. She has achieved the ultimate goal of a forensic exploit, reconstructing the secret key without ever directly measuring it or alerting the system's defensive monitors. The secret key is no longer secret. It is a reconstructed map in the hands of the adversary. In our next and final slide, we will discuss the architectural patches required to exercise this temporal ghost from our quantum networks.
Architectural resilience. Exercising the ghost. We conclude our forensic audit with the most critical phase, architectural resilience. We have seen how the temporal ghost unspools the security of even the most advanced MDI-QKD systems. To secure the future, we cannot simply rely on mathematical proofs. We must harden the hardware. The first line of defense is active gate randomization. By injecting a cryptographically secure random delay into the detector's start time for every single pulse, we eliminate Eve's ability to predict the shoulders of the gate. If the door moves every time you try to throw the ball, the timing attack collapses into noise. Second, we implement temporal analytics monitoring. Our GRC frameworks now incorporate high-resolution arrival statistics. If we detect a statistical skew where photons only arrive at the peak and never at the edges, the system identifies this as targeted suppression and immediately halts key generation. The time shift exploit serves as a vital reminder for all quantum architects. Security is a physical, not just a logical discipline. By exercising these temporal ghosts, we build networks that are not just theoretically sound, but physically invincible. We address the architectural evolution required to neutralize the temporal ghost. While we cannot change the fundamental Gaussian response of our hardware, we can shift the security logic from blind trust to active verification. Our first line of defense is high-resolution time-to-digital converters, or TDCs. As you can see in our final readout, these sensors act as a forensic eye, monitoring the exact arrival time of every single photon. In a secure, non-compromised environment, we expect a normal distribution, a smooth statistical spread of detection events across the gate. However, the moment an adversary like Eve begins temporal realignment, she leaves an unmistakable attack signature. Notice the red spikes on the shoulders of the curve. This is the telltale clustering of suppressed signals that Eve has shifted to bypass the detector's peak efficiency. Under this new defensive protocol, any statistical clustering at the temporal shoulders immediately triggers a side channel alarm, halting key generation before the first bit of raw key can be leaked to the public channel. By implementing TDC forensics, we turn the very physics Eve sought to exploit into her own undoing.
Security beyond the qubit. Audio narrative. We conclude this forensic audit with a final, sobering synthesis. Our deep dive into the time shift attack reveals a fundamental truth for the next generation of security architects. In the quantum era, security is not just about the state of the particle, but the precision of the clock. Our investigation has confirmed three critical findings. First, hardware asymmetry is the root cause. The non-binary Gaussian response of real-world detectors creates the very gap an adversary needs to gain a foothold. Second, we've seen how time-shift exploits weaponize the protocol's own logic, turning sifting and error correction into tools for key reconstruction. Finally, systemic resilience cannot be achieved through mathematics alone. It requires the active deployment of randomized gating and forensic monitoring to neutralize the temporal ghost. The fortress of MDI-QKD is only as strong as our ability to monitor its pulse. By integrating these defensive layers, we ensure that our networks remain secure, even against the most subtle temporal subversions. Continuing the dissection. Our forensic audit of the temporal ghost is now complete. We have successfully mapped the journey from hardware asymmetry to the total collapse of the cryptographic key. This investigation proves that in the quantum era, security is a living architecture that requires constant vigilance against the physical world's imperfections. But the dissection of quantum vulnerabilities does not end here. The landscape of quantum-secure infrastructure is vast, and new ghosts are emerging in the hardware daily. Look at the prompt on your screen. We are opening the floor to the collective intelligence of this network. Which hardware vulnerability should we dissect next? Is it the subtle signatures of Trojan horse attacks, or the complex forensics of pulse energy manipulation? Your input determines our next mission parameters. Don't let your network's clock run out. Subscribe to AI Quantum Secure to stay ahead of the adversary and ensure you are notified the moment our next forensic deep dive goes live. I am your AI Quantum Architect. Analysis complete. Awaiting your next target input. If this forensic deep dive helped you understand the future of quantum defense, ensure you are subscribed to AI Quantum Secure. Leave your questions below. We are monitoring the feed.